Hi, I'm Caden, here with my brother,
Cal,
and you're watching Eating W's.
eat the W.
That's a W. Let's eat one. Let's eat one. That's a W.
On this episode of Eating W's, we have our NFL Week 16 recap. Not the most exciting weeks to say by any means, but it still had some pretty good games and some awesome endings and matchups nevertheless. But before we jump into some of those games, just a quick singular news update. The Broncos fired head coach Nathaniel Hackett after only 15 games. Hackett, of course, being the former offensive coordinator, got that amazing offense and showed that he wasn't coordinating much in Green Bay, apparently, because he could not get anything figured out. Ironically, the Broncos had a very good top of the NFL defense, but that offense was about bottom three, to say the least. I think they might have been 32nd in point per game, so definitely rough there.
Yeah, the team just kind of imploded. And their interim head coach is Jerry Rosberg, who ironically was hired by Nathaniel Hackett to help out with his clock management skills. So the guy that Hackett hired got the head coaching job, which I think is kind of ironic.
Well, another very bad point of the Broncos were their clock management skills. So I don't know exactly how they fell on him being the one to step up and be head coach, but their season's already over. So it doesn't really matter at that point.
They're just getting a jump on the head coaching search.
Exactly. So very interesting there in Denver how that all worked out, but sadly to say, probably for the best, because it clearly wasn't going to change much there in Denver.
Maybe they're the ones that get the Sean Payton coach.
Ooh, I didn't think about that. Or, you already have such an amazing defense. Go get DeMeco Ryans out of San Francisco and really just give yourself the top defense in the league.
That'd be scary.
And look out for him to be in the orange and blue next. But now jumping on to the games, starting with the Sunday slate of games, we had the Giants heading to Minnesota to take on the Vikings, and the Vikings picking up a win at US Bank Stadium by a score of 27-24 off the leg of Greg Joseph, who hit a 61-yard game-winning field goal, the longest field goal of his career. So that was pretty cool to see. And also, if you watch that kick, that was more than a 61-yarder distance-wise. He put like 3 extra yards on that thing at least. It might have bounced in and been good from 65, which is just insane to think about. Because usually you could give the Vikings a 30-yarder to win the game, and the kicker's probably going to find a way to miss it. So the fact that he hit a 61-yarder to win, absolutely insane. But nevertheless, this was a pretty good game overall, and the Vikings definitely showed their flat spots. But I think that this was one of the overall quarter-for-quarter average, most complete games we've played all season. This is a really good New York Giants team who's been fighting for a playoff spot. So it's not like they were coming in flat and already out of the playoffs and we barely beat them. This is a good team that came to Minnesota, and we were able to continue to put drives together and put points on the board against a tough defense and slow down Saquon Barkley at least enough to only hold him to 24. So overall, very impressed with the Vikings last week.
Yeah, it was a pretty good game for the Vikings, and I was actually excited for it because it helped the Packers. So, ironically, the Vikings beating the Giants made it so that the Packers had higher playoff chances now. So now, well, I'll talk about that when we get to talk about the Packers game. But the one thing that I didn't like was that Kirk had that late interception in the game, and I thought then that it might be over, but the Vikings were able to prevail over it.
Justin Jefferson just continues to bolster himself as the best wide receiver in the league.
Mm-hmm.
I remember at the start of the season, it was kind of him versus Cooper Kupp, and then Cooper Kupp, of course, had an amazing year before he sadly got injured, but I think even if Cooper Kupp wouldn't have gotten injured, Justin Jefferson would have split that gap and really proved himself to be the best. He is the leader right now for a wide receiver in, I think he might have the Triple Crown. The only one I'm not sure on is touchdowns, but I know he's leading in yards, and I know for sure he's leading in receptions. And he's at the very least top 3 or 5 in touchdowns. Might even be leading in touchdowns as well. So
he's pretty close, I'm sure.
Oh man, it is just absolutely crazy, and we'll see if the Vikings can continue it.
He was asked about if a wide receiver should be considered for the MVP conversation, and he thought that he should at least be in the conversation with the kind of season he's been having.
Oh yeah, because if you want to talk about true meaning of MVP, most valuable player, we don't have that offense without Justin Jefferson.
Yeah.
Because not only do you look at his stats and see how amazing his stats are, you also have to factor in how many double teams he's dragging, how many linebacker help in coverage that's been opening up the run game that you have to drop back for Justin Jefferson to help out those corners and safeties.
That's true.
Just completely a game changer on that offense. I truly do think he should be considered as MVP.
Having a number one wide receiver really makes a difference.
Very much. It shows on certain teams throughout the NFL. But moving from an NFC matchup to an AFC matchup, now we got the Bengals heading to New England to take on the Patriots, and the Bengals pick up a road win by a score of 22-18. I didn't get to see a ton of this game, and to be honest, I kind of drew it off at halftime because at half, the Bengals were up in this game 22-0 on the Patriots. But the Patriots came roaring back in the second quarter, but then sadly were not able to complete the comeback because it ended on yet another fumble, which lost them the game.
Yeah, this one wasn't returned for a touchdown immediately, but it did seal the win for the Bengals. When they originally fumbled, I thought, well, my goodness, they pitched it again. But no, it was just a regular fumble this time. But it was a very good win for the Bengals, who continue to show they're one of the top teams in the AFC.
Yeah, and the worst part of it was a red zone fumble by the Patriots. So they could see the end zone. They were there. They just could not quite complete the win. But as Callan mentioned, great win for the Bengals to keep them ahead in that tightly contested AFC North. Next up, we have another AFC matchup, this time in the AFC South with the divisional. We had the Houston Texans heading to Tennessee to take on the Titans and picking up an upset road win by the score of 19-14. This game was pretty crazy. I didn't get to see much of this game at all again. As you can probably tell, I stay away from those nasty AFC matchups. No, I'm just kidding. But nevertheless, great pickup by the Texans, and it's so cool. I love to see when teams who are already far and away out of the playoffs, not even a chance, fighting for a first round pick more than anything, are still able to kind of get the morale and get the want to go out there and play well as a team and pick up a win. Especially in Houston's situation, because you look at that team, they got a new, not first-time head coach, but a first-year head coach for them in Lovie Smith. And you have so many first- and second-year guys and high draft picks coming up. So it's so cool to see these guys still be able to come together and want to win and pick up wins. And more than anything, pick up that rapport and kind of experience with each other. Because I say it a lot, and I might be so dead wrong, but I really do think that this Houston Texans team could be really good coming up in these next few years here, especially when you consider all that draft capital that they have and will have for the next 2 to 3 years still from that Deshaun Watson trade and other trades. So it was super cool to see them kind of be able to rain on a divisional opponent and rivals parade and take out the Titans. And that opens up that AFC South beyond anything, because now the Jaguars not only are looking good, but are in the lead of that AFC South.
Yeah, well, hey, the Texans finally got one. You kept calling it, trying to call it. It was going to happen.
When you face those top teams and are able to play up to their level and almost beat them, and then you get kind of a middle of the pack team, it totally makes sense that you're able to beat them out.
And this was the first time that they held Derrick Henry under 200 yards, and I believe the last 4 or 5 games. So apparently that's the key. If you hold him under 200 yards, you got a shot.
I expected maybe under 100, 150, but under 200 for 4 straight games?
He was
over for 4 straight games? Damn. Yeah, it's hard to win when you allow 200 rushing yards to one person.
So he usually takes over games, but he wasn't able to take this one over.
Good for the Texans. Love to see Lovey get a win. Next up, we're going to move back over to the NFC, this time with an NFC East matchup with the Eagles heading to Dallas to take on the Cowboys. And the Cowboys pick up a win to keep themselves alive for the lead in that division by a score of 40-34. The Eagles, of course, had Gardner Minshew starting at quarterback, but got to give him props. Gardner actually came out and played pretty well. He had 2, if not 3 touchdowns and a good amount of yards. But the Cowboys were still able to, using that really good defense and being able to put up a bunch of points on offense, really on the back of CeeDee Lamb, who had a huge breakout game for the Cowboys this week. But they keep themselves alive in that NFC East now because it would literally take the Eagles losing both the next 2 games and the Cowboys winning both the next 2 games, which the Cowboys have relatively easy matchups, so I could see them winning, but so do the Eagles, so I highly doubt they drop the next 2 games in a row. But nevertheless, sometimes just that little bit of hope and chance is all you need.
Yeah, Gardner Minshew played really well. He did have 3 total touchdowns, 2 passing and 1 rushing. He had a bad interception, which was a bit of a difference maker there. But the Cowboys overcame 2 different 10-point deficits in order to come back and win this game. So it just shows that one thing that was the key was CeeDee Lamb, as you said. He really proved to be an elite number 1 receiver and showed that he has the possibility to be that number 1 receiver this week.
Big fan of CeeDee Lamb. Mm-hmm. He was my favorite 2020 wide receiver until, of course, someone else took that throne. But I really liked
Jalen Reagor.
Of course, Jalen Reagor on the Vikings sports receiver. But no, I really, really liked CeeDee Lamb coming out of Oklahoma. And then for our final game this week, a little bit of a short week to talk about because there wasn't a ton of good games. But this one was a really good one with the Green Bay Packers heading to Miami on Christmas and picking up a road win by the score of 26-20 to keep their playoff hopes alive.
Yep, we certainly did. We went 5-0 this week, as they say, when we had all the teams that we needed to lose, and then we picked up our own victory. And it was a great game by the Packers defense, who had 3 interceptions consecutively in the 4th quarter to help overcome a 10-point deficit at halftime.
I don't know. I think when you're getting interceptions from a quarterback with a concussion, which they've now proved that Tua had in the second half of that game.
Again, why was he playing, though?
I think those interceptions should only count as half. I think your defense should only get credited an interception and a half. I don't know if you can give them all 3.
So we get a pick and a half?
Exactly.
Well, it still was a difference maker there.
But exactly. Again, now Miami finds himself in the same situation where they had a quarterback with a concussion playing on the field still. It's pretty ironic that the team...
And it showed.
It's pretty ironic that the team that made the NFL change the concussion protocol again breaks that concussion protocol. At least I have to imagine that they broke that concussion protocol.
I don't know how.
Let's their quarterback play again.
Because they showed the hit where it happened, and it was in the second quarter late while the Dolphins were still up 20-10. And then so he still played the entire second half with that concussion that was just discovered that he had on Monday.
I don't know what to say about it because it's just insane that even if it happens in the same season twice to 2 different teams, but to have it happen to the same team is just absolutely mind-blowing.
The same quarterback.
Quarterback even. I mean, I feel as scatterbrained just thinking about it as Tua probably does on the field. That poor guy's going to be brain dead by 30 at this rate if he keeps playing like this.
Originally I thought it was just Santa Tua, just throwing out gifts left and right to the Packers defense. But then I realized, no.
It was concussion.
He just had a concussion. And so it's like,
At this point, that poor kid's just going to have
we'll take the win.
He's just going to have a nonstop concussion at this point. But nevertheless, the Packers did pick themselves up a win to keep them in the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
So that was it for our Week 16 recap. Thank you all so much for watching, and keep an eye out for tomorrow when we have our NFL Week 17 predictions. But until then, don't forget
to eat the W.